Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 6th of November. I'm Tim Adams, the chair of this meeting and leader of the council. First of all, the first item on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence. I know we have apologies from Liz Withington. I don't think there are any further apologies. Item 2 is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of October. Were there any points or questions on those minutes? Okay. I would propose that they are accepted, seconded by Councillor Shires, and just all of those in favour, please. Yeah. Okay. Sorry? Okay, so that's fine then. So that's accepted. Item 3, public questions and statements. So we have Mr. Hernan joining us on behalf of Councillor Copleston. Mr. Hernan, please introduce yourself, and you have a number of minutes. Thank you.
Can you all hear me? Yes, good. Right. The planned development of North Walsham West indicates the population will increase to 18,000, making it by far the largest town in North Norfolk, with the poorest road connection to the economic and cultural capital, Norwich, via the B1150. Living in a rural county, there is a reliance on cars and HGVs for our transport requirements. In Coltishall, we already experience unacceptable levels of heavy traffic, with the road operating at capacity during peak times. So far, no traffic mitigation measures have been suggested to protect public safety. The road is already dangerous, with HGVs mounting pavements daily, and no solution has been suggested to improve the width restraint at the River Bure Bridge, nor to improve safety at existing junctions as traffic levels increase further. Coltishall B1150 Group has been examining crash map data and alternative routes for HGVs. Ultimately, we need a relief road to avoid the narrow river bridge and remove dangerous levels of traffic from a village as North Walsham expands in population. Do you agree that the traffic situation in Coltishall is already dangerous? And will your cabinet agree to make the road safer in order to protect the public by committing sufficient funding at the planning stage to facilitate this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hernan. Councillor Brown, I believe you're going to answer on my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending today and putting your question to us, Mr. Hernan. I think we may have met before at full council. So I'm Andrew Brown. I'm the portfolio holder for planning and enforcement. I want to, just deal with your question and answer you as best I can. I think the first point is that the County Council Highway Authority have, not to my knowledge at any rate, actually declared that the highway network is in Coltishall is unsafe. We know that there are concerns about the volume of traffic and the narrowness of the B1150 through Coltishall. And at the moment, we're waiting for the outcome of a traffic impact assessment, which is obviously a professional engineering assessment to advise us of whether the impact of the North Walsham development can be mitigated. Now, the development in North Walsham is governed by our planning policy, but also by the National Planning Policy Framework policies. And the National Planning Policy Framework stipulates that impact has got to be severe. There has to be a severe increase in traffic congestion and problems caused by the development. But if the development has mitigation measures within it so that the increased traffic effect is basically consumed in mitigation measures, then that will be sufficient in planning terms for it to proceed. For our own part as an authority in our local plan, we have got measures that will mitigate the impacts from the development, but we can only go so far as a planning authority. It will take highways authorities to be involved as well. So once we have the traffic impact assessment, we will be arranging a meeting. I think this is due to be later this month on the 27th or thereabouts with Broadland District Council. And then in the first week of December, it's our intention to visit Coltishall and organise a public meeting so that the full facts of the investigation of the traffic impact assessment can be rolled out to everyone in the village. And we will obviously consult local people on the likely impact of the development. So that's basically the position that we are in as a planning authority.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hannon, is there anything you want to ask as a supplementary question? Can I just ask? Yes, sorry, just so everyone can hear you on the.
Shall I start again?
No problem.
I do have a supplementary question, but I think you've already answered it. My question was, when will the traffic impact assessment be available to the public? And I think you said the 27th, did you? Is that correct?
It could possibly be available before then, but that's the date on which we're going to be meeting with Broadland District Council. That's the information I've been given.
So that what that you're saying there, then the traffic assessment will be made available to Broadland District Council, not to the public.
No, it will be made available to the public, but in December. So what we're doing is giving advance
I'm with you.
sites, as it were, to Broadland District Council initially.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Hannon, thank you for your time this morning.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Thank you for travelling to
Thank
see
you
us.
very
Thank you. Okay, item 4 is declarations of interest. I think you know, to a certain extent, we've all got an interest in terms of the council tax discounts, either directly or indirectly, due to close connections to our community. But I don't think it's a specific interest declaration from us all. Some of us, you know, some families, etc., might be in receipt of those discounts. But is there anything specifically we need to do in those circumstances?
I don't think so, unless there's anything specific that a member wishes to raise.
Were there any other declarations of interest? No. Okay, that's fine. There were no items of urgent business, and item 6, member questions. Was there anything other members in the room wanted to ask at this stage? No, that's fine. Item 7 is recommendations from Cabinet Working Parties and the Planning and Built Heritage Working Party for the meeting on the 9th of October. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, me again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just to confirm that the Blakeney Neighbourhood Plan has been recommended for adoption by the Working Party to Cabinet as a process for officially adopting the plan in its final form. And I'm very pleased that this neighbourhood plan has come forward, because it is, in a sense, slightly unique in the scheme of our other neighbourhood plans, insofar as being a coastal location. It now contains a policy to restrict any new dwellings moving forward to being primary residences, And not just that, but primary residence for people that are either living in Blakeney, working in Blakeney, live in adjacent parishes to Blakeney, or have relatives living in Blakeney. So those are the sort of criteria that will be applied in terms of ensuring that any new properties will be primary residences moving forward. And I would hope that some of our other coastal settlements where we have a high propensity of second homes or holiday lets will follow suit and be encouraged to look at introducing neighbourhood plans in other areas, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so
Thank
you're
you.
proposing the recommendations are accepted?
I will propose it.
And I'll second that. That's fine. So we're happy just to take a vote of everyone in favour. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you for your time again. So item 8, recommendations from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Obviously, Councillor Dixon is present. I don't think there was anything particularly specific. So if we're happy to, to move on then to item 9, the corporate plan 23 to 27 annual action plan for 24-25. Well, I'd like to start by simply thanking all members and officers who have contributed to the development of the annual action plan. The document details our ambitions on a number of targets for the year from April, and I'm grateful to everyone that contributed to the content via the member workshops and other settings. It's not an insignificant amount of work that's been done here, putting all this together and distilling this into the document that we have now. We're confident we can deliver the targets we have set with the resources and capacity that we have. It is a stretch, it is ambitious. This is a new approach for the council, allowing us the agility to respond to changing circumstances which we believe could occur, including of course the general election, the county deal, potential changes to waste collections nationally, and among other things, of course, a very challenging financial landscape. Over the next year, we are, of course, continuing our commitment to projects that will enable us to reach net zero. We hope to see the coastal defence projects in Cromer and Munsley begin, our local plan, of course, and we'll have a greater focus on issues for our rural communities and businesses, and continue to support residents who need our help the most. The annual action plan details broadly commitments to every locality in town, with everything from play equipment, affordable homes, to economic development and robust controls of our finances and resources. And I'm confident the document sets out our intentions for the year clearly for everyone who seeks to understand that. And lastly, I look forward to working towards achieving everything set out within the annual action plan. So were there any points? I think, Andrew, you wanted to address one particular point, potential amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman again. Referring to the meeting our housing need, which is set out on page 21 of your agenda papers. And you'll see that there are 6 actions listed on that particular page, and it's the second one, which reads promote greater take-up of neighbourhood plans by local communities with the objective of supporting 2 communities adopting neighbourhood plans a year from 2024. Given the information I've received recently from the team that deal with neighbourhood plans, it would appear that is unlikely to be achievable given the workload in the pipeline at the moment. So I would suggest that we make it read objective of supporting communities. So removing the word to, adopt neighbourhood plans each year from 2024. So that would be my proposed amendment to make it, as it were, more appropriate to the situation that we have on neighbourhood planning. Personally, I wish there were more, but we are where we are with that, and it's wholly dependent on parish councils deciding to move the writ in inverted commas to commence the process. And so to some extent, it is out of our hands. It's in the hands of parish councils to initiate the process.
Okay, so it's merely reflective of the progress that the communities that are developing neighbourhood plans are currently making. Was there any sort of feedback on that approach from an officer level? Is that okay?
Yeah, I'd certainly support that. It's absolutely right. It is a parish-led initiative, but supporting it is our role. We'd certainly commit to that, and I think that wording would be better for us.
Okay. Okay. So so with that amendment, then we'll hold that a second. Were there any other questions on the annual action plan at this stage from any other members? No. Okay. So Andrew has proposed that amendment, which I will support. Can I just, do we have to take two votes here, or can we take that as yeah, that's right. So we'll vote on the amendment first of all, and then the substantial document. So all of those in favour of the amendment, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. And then, as before, I'd like to propose our approval of the annual action plan for 24-25, and that's seconded by Councillor Fredericks. So all of those in favour, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you again to everyone that's contributed to this work. Okay, item 10 is budget monitoring period 6 for 23-24. Councillor Shine, is you happy to introduce us to this item?
Good morning, members. Apologies if my voice drops out. I'm trying my hardest to not overspeak. So the papers are in front of you. I know that we've had some conversation previously about how accessible they are to our members. So if there's any feedback on anything else in these papers that needs more clarity, please let me know. The team are working hard to make it as easy to read as possible. You will see that there are 6 recommendations, and for the information on each recommendation, recommendation 1, you'll find the explanation on page 30 to 31, 2.4 to 2.8. On recommendation 2, that's page 34, 3.12. Recommendation 3, which I have to point out, is an additional grant, so it's not additional spend that we're pulling from reserves, that's extra external income. That's page 34, 3.18. Recommendation 4 is page 35, 3.14, 5 is 3.15, and 6 is 3.16 to 3.18. The thing that I wish to highlight more from this report, as I'm sure my colleague Councillor Fredericks will add some depth to, is the impact that the local community and this authority are having from increased levels of homelessness across the district. This isn't something that we are feeling alone, and I don't wish to take any further from Councillor Fredericks. I know you've been working quite hard recently with other local authorities, so if you don't mind, I'd rather hand over to Councillor Fredericks on that particular recommendation.
Okay,
Thank you.
Persevering. Wendy, go ahead.
Thank you both. Yes, I was asked to speak at a national TA emergency summit last week, along with 4 other councils, and asked to present to 110 other councils. There was about 760 people on that call, and it was basically to ask the government for more support and help over the cost of temporary accommodation. So I have a presentation here that I'm going to send to all members regarding our current situation with homelessness and the main reasons for homelessness and why it's rising, which are domestic abuse. It's also people coming towards the end of their private lets, and private lets either being sold because of the economic climate or actually being turned into holiday lets because it's more profitable. Our original budget for temporary accommodation is £600 or £700,000 600,000 or 700,000 pounds a year, we are actually looking at a 1.2, 1.3 spend on temporary accommodation in the following year. This is a huge amount of money, but I want you to think about all those people that we are putting in temporary accommodation, and that is the real cost to society and to those families that have to be put into bed and breakfast, which is out of our district, because our district is a tourist industry, so bed and breakfasts are used all year round now for tourism purposes. Those bed and breakfasts that we use are away from family, away from work, away from school. Incredibly disruptive for families in particular, and hard to support. I'm grateful that we have, probably by the end of the year, 23 homes of our own for people to go into safe accommodation where they can rebuild their lives. But we're conscious that we don't want this to be yet another tenure. And this echoed throughout the country of all of the councils present. Whether your political colours are different or the same, we are all calling on government support. So the LGA and the DCN have composed a letter to government asking for their attention on this, for added support on this. And that's being signed by every council leader, deputy leaders and portfolio holders for housing. So we're putting that to the government, and we're hoping, because it's a Monday and we're all very optimistic, that the government will listen and in their autumn statement will address this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. Tina, is there anything, Councillor, is there anything you wish to say to address this report further to what members have been saying?
As I do keep saying, we are experiencing more pressure on our budgets, and we are forecasting a year-end overspend. We will take action to try and reduce this. We'll identify savings where we can. I've asked service managers to look at their budgets and try and reduce their expenditure where they can. So we are putting in place, I say, an action plan to reduce this forecast overspend, so that hopefully by the end of the year we can be as near to a balanced budget position as possible.
Okay, thank you, Officer Stanquist. So clearly the pressure will unfortunately grow in the meantime, unless there are changes to this approach nationally. It's affecting many authorities more than us in terms of their financial position. And, you know, indeed, there's been a lot in the local government journals about, and councils saying fairly openly that they think they will reach a position where they have to declare a Section 114 notice. So we're not in that position yet, but this is only developing and growing. And as Councillor Fredericks has said, we do need to see that change nationally. And to address this very national housing crisis. Obviously, there are other pressures as well, in terms of the pressure of having to pay the parish council precepts up front for the year, and in respect of the COVID grant having to be repaid unexpectedly sooner. But otherwise, you know, besides those unexpected pressures and this significant pressure in terms of TA, the budget appears obviously to be functioning as was intended. So with that, are you happy to sorry, Christopher, you go ahead, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may ask some questions. page 28 at the bottom, it mentions the unknown pay award. That pay award was agreed last week. So I just wonder if someone can tell me whether what impact that actually has on the figures that have been presented today.
On that point, yeah.
Yes, we've had the pay award agreed at a national level, and it is £1,925 per member of staff for all that are on anything other than the chief officers' pay scales. And the impact is that it will create a pressure of £120,000 when we've worked it through, because of the number of staff that we included a 5% pay award in our budgets, but the significant number of staff that are on lower grades, that actually the 1,925 equates to a much higher percentage increase on their salaries, and that's created a budget pressure for us. We've just worked that through on Friday, and I've let Councillor Shires know that information just this morning.
Thank you for that. Will that be updated? Presumably this is going to go to full council, so will the updated figures be included in that report?
Yes, we can do that, yes.
Yeah. Can I ask that in following a similar vein, if I may? If we go to page 32, it mentions the concern about not getting fully reimbursed to the tune of 1.6 million for housing benefit. Is that factored into the anticipated deficit of £500,000?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Lovely, okay, thank you. Can I just one final thing? We have mentioned this before, and that's about having to pay borrowing interest. I know you did give a cogent explanation before, but going forward, would it be appropriate for the council to make sure we got something with the equivalent of rainy day money to hand, so that we don't end up having to sort of pay interest on money like that going forward? Because if you're looking at potentially paying £300,000, well, that's the equivalent of probably an annual, what we would get in terms of the increase for council tax in any given year. Seems to have a way structure of paying that in interest when we have plenty of money in the bank elsewhere.
Yes, that is offset by the high level of investment interest that we're gathering. So the net position is not quite that severe. I have spoken with our Treasury officer, and we will be looking at reducing the level of borrowing to a minimum as we go forward, looking at things such as if we actually did need to borrow, to only borrow for the shortest period of time possible. So I am actually monitoring that myself, and will bring that down to a minimum level.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Shires, are you happy to propose the 6 recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. But I just wanted to make sure that our thanks to the housing team are noted as well, because it's not a very pleasant position for them to be in when they're quite powerless to support everybody as much as they would like to do. So I just want to make sure that thanks to the housing teams noted, and obviously thanks to all the teams who are watching the budget as closely as we are. But I would like to propose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I will second those 6 recommendations. Can we have a vote for all of those in favour, please? Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic. So item 11 is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report for the current financial year. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really sorry. The information's in front of us. I know this can be quite a difficult paper to digest. So the information that's given towards the front of the paper, the economic update on page 71 will give everybody a bit of a background as to where we are, but the key changes are on page 70. I'm so sorry. On the whole, we're looking quite healthy in terms of income because of the raised interest rates, although days have lessened slightly. So, sorry, although they are slightly lesser than were previously, we're still seeing quite a healthy income from our Treasury.
Okay, thank you. Were there any questions on this item? Anything else anyone else wanted to say to address this? Okay, so so the recommendation is to recommend to full council that the Treasury Management Media report for 23-24 is approved, proposed. And I'll second that. Can I have a vote of all those in favour, please? Yeah, thank you, unanimous. Item 12, sorry, do you want to should we come back to this item? Do you want, are you sure? Yeah, okay. So item 12, council tax discounts and premiums determination for 24-25. Councillor Shires.
Yeah, thank you very much. So recommendations are set out. The only thing that I wanted everyone to be aware of was recommendation 9. With regards to the second home premium, subject to necessary legislation. The legislation went for royal assent, I believe, Friday before last. So that's to do with the second homes premium of 100%. That means that from April 2025, as we've previously agreed, the date I forget, we can now charge that rate for second homes. I spoke to Officer Knight on Friday about that, and he's going to start working with other finance managers for other councils to see where they are, because I believe that this council needs to have a conversation with the county council about the extra income that will come from that and how North Norfolk residents can benefit. Aside from that, the as we spoke, I believe it was Friday, Councillor Adams, about the care leavers discount. That's quite prominent. That's recommendation 5, and that is funded by the county council. So care leavers receive a full discount on the council tax. That's everything that I wanted to add, but I'm happy to propose. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Fredericks, you wanted to add something? Go ahead.
I do. Thank you so much for this work, and of course, I wholeheartedly agree on the second homes 100% levy. And I just wanted to make it clear as well that even though that this is coming in 24, that local government are obliged to give a year's notice before we can actually collect the first penny. And I think that we really need to talk to our colleagues about that as well, and see if there's any way we can bring that forward. Also, I just want to talk about empty homes, because that's a hot topic as well. Our amazing empty homes officer has brought 92 homes back into circulation, May to October this year. So it's a relatively short time, and I just want to praise the work of our officer. And that also means that we're collecting council tax for those homes as well as them being put into circulation. So I just want to highlight his level of work and his help with that.
Yeah, thank you. And that's obviously in relation to recommendation 8 in terms of the long-term empty premiums decreasing from 24 to 12 months. Again, subject to the relevant legislation, but demonstrating our commitment to addressing this issue, albeit obviously it's quite small in North Norfolk as a whole in terms of the number of empty properties that we have. Ms. Snick, go ahead.
Yes, as we've said, the legislation has now been passed. I think it was 26th of October, so we shall amend the report to reflect that in time for full council.
Yeah, to have I suppose guidance notes, etc., from government at this stage, aren't we? So so some of that will be in the detail. And thank you, Councillor Shires, for addressing the point about care leavers. So yes, I did have a few questions about that later on in the week, and you know, I think that's, you know, a very good thing to be doing, and alongside the county council as well in that respect, for those care leavers. Obviously it makes such a, you know, minimal difference to our budget in the county councils, but it's for all the right reasons. So is that time limited? Do you have any idea?
I don't, because from the papers it suggests that that is a county council decision because they subsidise that. So I guess that rests with the county council. Perhaps that's a conversation we need to have from a revenues perspective.
That's fine. Were there any other questions on this item? Okay, so councillor Shires, we happy to propose the 9 recommendations? I'm happy to second, and all of those in favour, please. Yeah, fantastic. Item 13 is future of emergency phones. So obviously really a little bit of media interest in this in terms of changing commitment, I suppose you could say, to the equipment that's there, given the national push to upgrade to new technology, essentially leaving this behind. First of all, I don't know if Councillor Blathwaite, there was anything you wanted to add to this report, or whether I'm okay to go to
No, there's nothing I
Councillor.
can add, just that I support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's go ahead.
Good morning, members. So before you is the paper which suggests the removal of the emergency phones at 22 locations along our coastal district. These phones have, in essence, become redundant in terms of their usage. They are currently unoperational at 5 of the 22 locations because BT can no longer maintain that technology as we move away from copper lines to fibre optics. The details contained within the paper, actually, in section 6.1 on page 102, I must update. We had an email from BT on Friday informing us that our line rental will increase from £37.89 a month to £135.57 a month, which increases the overall saving of removing these phones from £31,241.76 to £57,028.48. A timely email to receive. So the proposal is to remove the phones from these locations. The team have undertaken some work to see what the implication of this would be. At each of the 22 locations, an emergency call can be made from a mobile phone by the use of, when you make an emergency call, you're not reliant on just your own network, but you can pick up from other networks as well. And in each of those 22 locations, that is an option to use that multi-SIM approach to be able to make that emergency call. We've been in contact with the RLNI and the Coast Guard, who both have not raised any concerns about the removal of these phones, but it is purely, whilst delivering a saving, the main reason for this paper is because the technology is becoming redundant and harder for the team to maintain and repair that provision. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the introduction to the item. So yes, clearly we probably wouldn't be here unless these changes to the commitment towards the existing equipment weren't being made. But that's clearly a very hefty phone bill for, given the call hasn't been made since 2000. So it's obviously the case that they've been left somewhat behind by our mobile phones. There's certainly not been any significant reduction in demand for the emergency services that we know of in that time. But these phones are no longer needed. So were there any questions on this item? Councillor Shires, go ahead.
Sorry, I can just feel the North Norfolk News headline now, and that we're removing emergency phones. I just wanted to clarify for anybody that's watching. On page 103 of the report, 12.2, it outlines that BT are unable to provide assurances that an alternative to analogue lines will be available to keep the emergency phones operational post digitalisation. So it's not that we're willfully removing safety from the community, it's that the provider won't be able to provide it. And I just want that to be absolutely crystal clear before I see the headline.
That's right, that's correct. So that's obviously definitely why we're here. So With that, I'm happy to propose option 2 in terms of removing all of the emergency phones from district coastline. So seconded by councillor Blathwaite, and all of those in favour, please. Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Item 14 is Stalham Sports Centre in connection with the proposal for the School Academy Trust, Synergy Academy Trust to take operations of the site back in-house. We don't have councillor Withington here today. Councillor, I don't know if there's anything you would say to introduce this item. Thank you.
I'm happy to introduce this item in councillor Withington's absence. We have discussed the paper with her. So the proposal outlined is to transfer the Stalham Sports Centre, which is a dual use sports centre, back to the Synergy Trust. We were approached by the Synergy Trust and a request that would we consider them taking it back. So Stalham Sports Centre is based on the school site. It contains a 4-court sports hall, 4 tennis courts, and a multi-use games area, which is hired available for the public at in the evenings between 6 and 10, and the weekends between 8 and 5, and the school holidays as well. It's one of our lesser used sports centres and has just under 5,000 visits last year, in comparison to the dual use site at Cromer, which had 15,805, and North Walsham at 15,862. We've been in conversations with the Synergy Trust and everyone active about the handing over of this site back to the Synergy Trust, and they're confident that they will be able to run it as a community sports facility for the benefit of the community. They do have some experience of doing that at Alderman Peel in Wells. So that's the basics of the paper. They will continue to operate it, and it with written into that contract would be that we would require them to do that for at least 5 years to operate it for community use. So I'm happy again to take any questions.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Obviously, clearly our team will continue to work with the Synergy Trust on the provisions at the site. The dialogue will continue, you know, over as we do in terms of our engagement with organisations that provide sports across the district. So, this seems like the right thing, I think, for the future. Councillor Shires, go ahead.
Just to note that Councillor Matthew Taylor, the member for Stalham, one of the members for Stalham, had hoped to be here today.
Okay.
But unfortunately he's not able to be, and when I spoke to him, he was in support of this. So he said to not be here. And I didn't say that I would speak on behalf of him, but I think it would be useful for us to know.
Yes, of course.
Thank
We had an earlier discussion offline in respect of local member involvement, which I thought was important in this respect. Okay, subject to any further questions, we move on to the recommendations, which is the Cabinet agrees to hand back operations of the Stalham Dual Use Sports Centre to the Synergy Multi Academy Trust, and instruct the Leisure and Locality Services Manager to undertake this process. So that's proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Shires, and a vote of all of those in favour, please. Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. And thank you again for your time, Emily. So item 15 is the annual update on the regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. The annual report comes to us every year. So Councillor Ringer, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. The council is required to have a policy for the use of the powers under the Regulatory of Investigative Powers Act, and the guidance is that elected members review this annually, and that is what this paper is doing. I haven't got anything else to add other than what is in the set out in the paper, but Officer Hems may wish to elaborate on any points.
Okay. Steve, is there anything you wanted to add?
I think Councillor Ringer has summed it up quite adequately. Thank you. It is in line with Home Office guidance that members should consider the policy that it uses around these provisions on an annual basis. We have updated the policy in line with some information that comes out from both government in terms of the relevant codes of practice, and we have also taken the advice of a training provider that we use to enable us to reflect on the appropriateness of the changes that we've made. The second part of the report, I suppose, in Beyond Policy, is just to inform you about the activity that has been undertaken using these provisions during the year, and you'll see that we've used what's called a covert human intelligence source on one occasion in the preceding 12 months. I'm happy to take any questions, but otherwise the report's before you.
Okay, and there have been no significant changes in the last year. It was certainly no changes in legislation, and there's therefore probably no reason in terms of changes to the report that we need to note based on last year, rather.
No, it's just some updating to the relevant codes of practice. One of the main things is that the IPCO, the governing body of this, basically have withdrawn a previous piece of guidance that a lot of authorities referred to and relied on. It hasn't been replaced yet. Effectively, we've removed the references to that document from our policy documents. And again, one of the benefits we have is that we receive information from the company who advises on these matters, basically saying that other inspections that had been undertaken had been critical of policies that had left those references in. And so we've used that in order to just make sure that we are as up to date as we possibly can be in terms of our policy documentation.
Okay, thank you. Were there any further questions on this item? No. Okay, so the recommendations are set out there in 3 points. Callum, are you happy to propose those? And I'm happy to second. I think all of those in favour, please. It's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Item 16 is the Net Zero Fast Followers programme, and you've been incredibly timely because we've just got to this. So well done on getting here. I know it's not been an easy journey. I think we've got Jonathan and perhaps some others. So thank you, anyone, for all of you who've come and joined us. Are you happy where you're sat there? Is that okay for you all? Yeah, I mean, is that okay? Presumably for everyone else, that's fine. So microphones there, if you can, are just using that. And welcome and thank you for your time.
Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Great. Well, thanks very much for inviting me along. It always seems to be sunny when I come to this office, so hopefully that stays with me. Just wanted to kind of introduce you to the project, to myself, and the work through the partnership. There's Greg here, who some of you may know, who's the partnership manager. So it's got a few slides just to take you through the project, and then we'll hand over to Kate for halfway through for a bit more of the local information.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we just go to the first slide, please. So I'm working on a project. It was externally funded. So through the partnership, there was a bid that went in to part of a net zero living program by Innovate UK. And we have funding for 2 years to look at removing what we call non-technical barriers, which I'll come to in a moment, to net zero living. And it's all about working with communities across Norfolk on 2 strands of work, citizen preparedness and clean growth. And the reason I have a map on there is just to show you a kind of wider variety of projects happening across the country, which we're connected to. But what we're doing is innovative approaches to how we get closer to the kind of scale of transition that we want, whilst also supporting communities and making it work for everybody. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I mentioned there's two strands to this project. The first one, citizen preparedness, is ultimately with the change in how we consume energy, heat our homes, where we get energy from, how we move around, transport, and other behaviours. How do we start preparing for that? And how do we unlock demand for some of the kind of low carbon goods and services that we can then use to boost the kind of clean growth economy within Norfolk? So the key stage of the project is, first of all, selecting a cross-section of communities in Norfolk. There's one per district council area, and together they give a good blend of the sort of demographic, economic, and geographical circumstances, so we can maximize learning. And so this will feed into kind of future plans for the partnership and the councils. What we're doing is we're engaging with those communities, we're building relationships so that we can then start to talk to them and understand the views around climate change, the agenda, people's concerns, their aspirations, etc. We are not just treating each individual council area as its own project, but actually as a connected project. And one of the aspirations, particularly through the work of Greg and the partnership, is how we start creating a network of communities where we can start to share more of that information, the inspiration, the learning. Once we've engaged with these communities, we are finding the barriers. I mentioned these are what we call non-technical barriers. So if you imagine things like improving energy efficiency of your homes, around connecting to certain types of transport, electric vehicles, putting renewables in homes, it's things like knowledge and awareness of what might be out there. What's the best option for you? Where do I go to for advice? Where can I get funding, finance? Where can I find trusted providers? How do I know they're trusted providers? So all those sorts of things, we know those common barriers are out there, but what we don't know is how they relate always particularly to certain places and people's situations. And then likewise, once we've found those barriers, we're going to be working with the communities to say, what works? How do we address this? Where does the information sit? Who best provides it? And then test it out so we know that actually works. So testing it out in place. And that's why it's a 2-year project. And then across all those communities, we're sharing that learning again and again, iterating what we find to make sure we've got the right kind of information, advisory and support system that starts to scale up and unblock these barriers, but not just for a few people, but across all people and communities. The clean growth aspect is a smaller part of the project, but fundamentally, if we can increase that demand, we know that one of the things we need is stronger local supply. And there's an opportunity for the kind of local economies in Norfolk to be part of that transition. So we need to engage some of those businesses who are already there providing, who may be seeing people drop out. How do we increase the market for them? How do we make them part of the solution in helping provide advice and support? Then there's all the businesses who may be affected by this, around heating, plumbing, etc. How do we show the avenues for support for them, the evidence of demand that may be coming for them? And then how do we connect the demand to supply? So these are things we'll be working with a range of partners across Norfolk and locally within those communities to make sure we're building up that connection, moving the two elements of supply and demand together. Cover the next slide, please. So how are we approaching this project? So because it's really trying to listen and engage and find out things that work for people, we're trying to find the right options for people and the place they live in, because some people are in constrained areas of grid and other factors, for the right times, those options, and in the right form to make this transition work for them. So we don't want people or communities to be left behind. We don't want individuals to be left behind. And this is very much a calling in, not a calling out. People who should have done things, and actually bring people to the table and say, what would you like to do? What can we do? The way of working with the communities right from the start is going to be with and not to. And we want to connect within communities. So we're building an understanding of how we involve communities in the net zero transition. We want to identify the best options, identify the best routes. We want to build that knowledge and that capacity to act in this way. And because it's sponsored by Innovate UK, what we're trying is going to be new. So we things that we learn along the way we didn't know before. There were things that maybe don't work right the first time. But because of the innovative approach, we're going to keep testing out and learning. And we'll be supported by the funders through a national program to bring in leading expertise nationally to come and support those communities. And that's sort of the value added to this project. Ultimately, we want to make the right thing to do a lot easier and a lot more accessible. Next slide, please. Why do this? Well, there's a number of reasons. I'll try and whiz through those quickly. This is the sell, I guess. So the first thing is an evidence base for a place-based approach in local climate plans. How do you know what works? How do you tailor things? If we do this right, we can increase the scale of action. More people are able to do more things themselves. Ultimately, that leads to reductions in emissions. This is a way of involving communities in the climate and energy agenda. And that provides things like stake and acceptance and other benefits. It's also about improving equity and outcomes in the transition. At the moment, there's a lot of concern around who benefits from this and who can actually access the options. So by acting in this way and reaching out to all groups and building around what people need, we hope that we can move everyone along and achieve things like warmer homes, energy security, more sustainable living, and reduce costs. And that's really part of that addressing local and household needs. Everyone's situation is slightly different. So how do we factor those things in? How do we build campaigns and communications that can be tailored and targeted? How do we know what messaging work for different people? We want to build a clear place in people's minds for advice and support. It's a confusing landscape out there. People, when you talk around energy and net zero, etc., so clarifying that for people, and that'll be work across the partnership to understand how best we do that. There's quite a lot of funding and finance out there. A lot of it people aren't aware of. Some of it is complicated to access. So we want to make sure that the communities in Norfolk can make the best use of what's out there currently, but also being able to use this project to secure perhaps further bids for the area. We're preparing local communities and the economy for what's coming. So we know there are changes coming for push and pull reasons, but what we don't want is people to be left behind and be left on expensive or insecure options. We want to make sure that businesses are ready for the change and accessing support that's out there for, say, skills and training. And as I mentioned just now, there's already quite a lot of interest in this project, and through the work with Greg and the partnership, there's a lot of other projects that we can start to align to or suggest that they come and work in Norfolk. So it's putting Norfolk on the map for innovation in this area. And I think at this point, next slide, please. Just one last thing about how it's governed. So I'm the project manager of the project. I'm the innovation and delivery manager. So I will be sort of doing the day-to-day management, but working through the Climate Change Partnership, who I'm sort of employed through. And I'll be working with Kate and others here to make sure there is the local connection, but we also have a steering group made up of local authority officers and an advisory group, which is providing local, regional and national expertise in all the areas of the project. We have also mapped out the kind of key community projects, public health, voluntary, faith groups, etc., so that we are not treading on toes, but working effectively with partners on the ground. I mentioned before, we have the support of a whole national programme and that National Network of Learning. And we are going to be procuring additional support through consultants for the co-production and engagement, because we're working across 7 communities, it can be quite a stretch, and it's a very specialist skill set. Thank you very much. Next slide, please.
So as Jonathan said, each district or borough is choosing one community to use for this project. And so the climate team, in consultation with Councillor Varley and some other interested parties, have been discussing what community we thought best to use and met the criteria of the project. And we've chosen Stalham to take forward for this project. So it met the criteria in terms of size and the demographic and housing mix that there is, but it also provides a contrast to the other communities that have been chosen across Norfolk as part of this project. It has interesting features in that it has a very high electricity consumption, partly to do with the amount of off-gas heating. There's a lot of electric heating in Stalham, which makes it quite an interesting area to work in, as well as pockets of fuel poverty, a mix of ages of housing, including some post-war housing. The diagram there shows the EPC ratings of the housing in the area, with the green being good and the red being bad. And again, you can see the pockets where we've got the new estates with the better EPC ratings, but there's lots of orange and red houses dotted through the area where hopefully we'll be able to make a difference. And obviously it's interesting in its geographical location being on the edge of the tourist area with its proximity to the Broads. The other real main thing with this is we need a community who we think will engage with us. And the next part of the project, as Jonathan will outline in a minute, is what do we do next? We need a community that's going to engage and that can see that they will get some benefits out of this project. We've already got quite a few projects running in Stalham, which will complement this. So Norfolk Warm Homes have targeted Stalham because of these pockets of fuel poverty, and hopefully we'll better work with them as part of this project. We've got the High Street Task Force project going on in Stalham at the moment. Our community connector, who was hoping to be with us this morning but wasn't able to, is well established and can put us in touch with lots of community groups and hopefully people to help that engagement go forward. We've also got some plans for some increased EV charging in the area, and the community is already developing a neighbourhood plan. So that community engagement is a really important part of moving this project forward. So we're hoping we've chosen a community who will provide that engagement.
Thanks, Kate. And just to stress that one of those factors across all the council working with for adoption of the community is very much how can we get in and engage with people? That's fundamental success of the project. So where we are now is we have across each of the district councils the sort of community selected in name. What we're doing is a process before we announce these names is making sure that cabinets, committees, ward members and parish and town councils are engaged, so they have a chance to feedback and endorse the project, very much to keep with that sense of working with the community. And so that's happening now and into December. And the next stage, once we've had the endorsement of the parish and town councils, is to start mapping out who we should be speaking to in the community, really getting the insight that we can't get from data on a page, etc., but the feel for the community, which groups are represented by which organisations, what events would be useful for us to engage through, and that builds a plan for communication and engagement. Some of that will be done prior to sort of Christmas to start creating awareness of the project on the ground. And once we have the expert behaviour change consultants, then we'll be providing this in-flight information to have a full launch in the community in the new year. In between now and then, we'll be understanding some of the local concerns, issues, ambitions, opportunities. So really just building the flavour of the community and where they're at with this agenda and other issues that may affect it. As soon as we can, we'll have a network of the communities brought together, be able to connect the parish and town councils, and to have a launch event to create some real awareness of the project and a bit of excitement about what it might achieve. And then from January, we'll have to get an update once we have the procurement sorted, but from sort of mid-January onwards, we're looking to have those experts on the ground and really working in depth for the next year to 18 months with those communities. So I'll provide updates via the lead officers in each councils to make sure this timescale is constantly updated, but also keeping in touch with the communities and through the work of the partnership, creating some communications online and through other channels to make sure people are aware of the project. I'm very happy to take any questions people have either now or at a future time, but I'll leave my contact details there for future reference.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, Kate. And we're very proud of what our team have achieved in recent years. So thank you, to everything for everything that the partnership has done to support that work. I know I've got Councillor Fredericks that wanted to say something. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and this is of paramount importance to our residents. I just wanted to point out in particular Stalham, we are going door knocking with our energy officer, door to door, knocking on residents and asking them how we can help through the Warm Homes grant application. I've also asked that the leaflet regarding our help hub is put in that project as well. So we're offering a holistic benefit to those households, and I would love to roll that out. And it's something that I think our community connectors are very good at. So yes, thank you so much for your work, and It's something that we're doing as well. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Councillor Barley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would just like to, wholeheartedly thank Jonathan for coming here today and giving this thorough presentation, and also Kate and my other team members for, progressing this work. It's fantastic. I always hammer on about our targets, our ambitious targets. We are striving towards net zero by 2030 and for the wider district by 2045. Now, if we look into our emission rates as an internal organisation, that makes roughly about 1% of the overall emissions. So I'm sure we can all do the maths. The biggest emissions are outside of our control. So therefore, it's absolutely fundamental as an organisation that where we can, we facilitate, but we really need to influence, we really need to engage with our communities, with residents, with businesses, with community groups. And this is what this project is going to do. So I'm very content that this is the way forward. And I can't thank Jonathan and the team enough for taking this forward through the Norfolk Climate Change Partnership. Thank you.
Very certainly. I'm sold. So is Councillor Ring, go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's welcome. It's good to meet you, and we've had some conversations as well in the past about this project. I think what I wanted to highlight is a little bit about the fact that we need to talk about the co-benefits of dealing with climate change. And Wendy, you sort of hit the nail on the head when we talk about your energy officer going around, and it's sometimes a bit of a hard sell when you talk about climate change, and when you've got families that are dealing with real challenges out there, climate change can sometimes feel a bit secondary, and certainly not the priority. And being able to connect the two things to, we can help you to save money, you can help your house feel more like a home, and benefit the environment. It's really, really important, and being able to identify those barriers and help people to overcome them on the ground, I think is vitally important. I also welcome the work with businesses as well. I know that when I speak to people, particularly in hospitality, that there is a level of enthusiasm towards doing something, but not necessarily knowing how. And I'll be really interested to see how it goes in Stalham on that front. One question that I do have is, as your project moves forward, and I'm really pleased that you'll keep us up to date, but what can we learn, and what can other communities learn from what's happening in Stalham as we go along? Is there anything that we can glean on the way that we can start rolling out elsewhere in the district before the conclusion of your project, so that when we go around as district members to parish councils, for example, we're able to say, this is doing really well, why don't you think about that in this village or that village, for example?
Absolutely, there will be learning that come out throughout the project, and one of those things you already mentioned is the relevance of co-benefits, and there may be things that are seasonal there, so around energy concerns of the winter, warm homes. There may be things as well that people connect this to, say, around broader environmental issues or cost of living issues. And so what's working, what people are telling us on that front, very much sharing, and how that relates to place, but not just for this community, but across all the Norfolk communities, so that we can keep it live. And it's a fast changing sort of landscape in terms of policy and funding. So we have to sort of be agile with what's happening nationally. So there may be opportunities to, if something comes along, to make sure that we can help support a live scheme on the ground. And it's very much working with what's also running in the area. You've mentioned about the work on energy. So very much, how do we help existing projects reach further? How do you make things you already have as priorities go further? And then also understand how that can roll out to other communities. And bring the parishes in as advocates for this work, so they can speak to others. So it's not just myself talking to them, but sort of peer to peer. So we hope there'll be learnings coming out constantly. both the things that do work and the things that don't work. So I always think there's a lot to learn from that. And generally just the framing of communications and how easy it is to engage people on this in different groups who may not normally come to the table for what ostensibly is around climate change, but it's actually fundamentally around how we heat and power our homes.
Thank you. Councillor Toy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, everybody. I'd just like to understand climate change and the ozone layer was first discovered in 1896. In 1988, it was first taken seriously, and in 1994 was the first legislation. What is it that we're going to achieve from this that hasn't? Why aren't people understanding it? So I'm trying to understand how you're going to get that message out there, because we need to. I'm absolutely supporting what you want to do. I don't understand, if it's taken that long already, how are we actually going to get that change? Thank you.
I think it's a very good question. Nationally, for some time, and the government has its own survey on this, concern about climate change has been increasing and stayed high. I think it's around 70 to 75% of the population. So we know people are concerned. We know that people feel they have a role in it, but there's always been two gaps. One is sort of concern into individual action and intention to act into being able to act. And it's particularly that last part where there's all sorts of reasons. It can be people's current capacity and time. It can be people attempt things and then get confused by the layout of the landscape, funding routes, or a lack of trustworthy suppliers. Whatever it is, we know there's a lot of reasons where people stop when they had an intention to act, or when people have been concerned but not felt they can act. So we need to close both of those gaps. I think that what that comes through having conversations, it comes through behavior change, it comes through engagement. It's not something that we can solve purely through policy and regulation, but it's something that I think has to come from conversations from the bottom up and increasing awareness, and particularly people's sort of trust networks, people that they speak to, people that they engage with, seeing examples of this happening in places and people they can relate to. I think that's a really strong amplifier for the change. So I'd agree that the progress internationally since we've known about the danger of climate change has not accorded with the rate that we needed. And we have a number of other things happening around the country, which are very much, I guess you might call more top down. And this is very much how do we bring people into this, feel they have a stake and close those gaps. So that's what I'd say on that. It's not going to be easy. It would all have been done, but that's why we kind of have to try it in this way, I think.
Sorry, if I can just summarise that, that's okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So what, from this project, that part of it is to get that desire to do something into an action. Is that it, in summary? Thank you.
Okay. Were there any further questions from other members? Okay. Well, Jonathan, thank you ever so much for your presentation, and to Kate as well for supplementing that, and to all of the team for all of the work that you're all doing. And yes, we're very grateful for that. And I think it's quite exciting actually what's happening there in Stalham. And you can see the scale of the challenges as well, very, very certainly with that map. So thank you for sharing that with us. I don't have any further questions myself. So thank you again for your time, and we look forward to future progress and next updates. Item 17 is one we don't need to take, which is in terms of exclusion of the press and public, and we have no items of private business. So happy to declare the meeting closed, and thank you all for your time.